Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And today, I thought it be prudent to first start at the Kerch Strait Bridge. We have received reports, obviously, that Ukrainian forces have launched attempted strikes on the Kerch Strait Bridge. Do we know for certainty if these strikes were successful? Did they hit their target? Did they add more destruction to the Kerch Strait Bridge? And the answer to that is we don't know at this point. The Russian side is claiming that the Ukrainians used modified S-200s. These are normally air defense systems that have been upgraded, modernized, and turned into ground attack systems. Now, these missiles do not have the size of a warhead that would be needed to destroy the Kerch Strait Bridge. So first, we can't verify if, in fact, these were modified S-200s. We just don't know at this point. Now, were they successful? Again, we just don't know. There was a lot of smoke in the area. Now, the Russians are stating that that smoke is self-generated by their air defense forces trying to obscure targeting by the Ukrainians of the Kerch Strait Bridge. It could also be a sign of if the Ukrainians are using domestic systems to go after the Kerch Strait Bridge. It may be a sign that the Russians have had some success in degrading the use of the Ukrainian Storm Shadow missile that has been provided by the United Kingdom, the Brits, to the Ukrainians. We know the Russians have launched a series of strikes going after that Ukrainian capacity, that Ukrainian capability. Now, is it a sign, again, that the Ukrainians are using these S-200s, that the Storm Shadows or the ability of the Ukrainians to launch the Storm Shadow has been greatly reduced? But again, we don't know that for certain as of right now. The Russians continue offensive operations within the vicinity of Kupiansk. Again, as we have reported earlier, there is a very sizable Russian force running from Kupiansk south towards Liman and Seversk of 100,000 plus Russian forces, 1,000 main battle tanks, and an additional thousands and hundreds of multiple launch rocket systems, artillery pieces, and armored infantry fighting vehicles. And the Russians continue that very large-scale, very methodical offensive operation with very heavy air support. They continue this operation within the vicinity of Kupiansk. The kabooms in Kupiansk continue. Now, as for the fighting in Zaporizhzhia on the southern front, it appears that while it still continues, any thought that the Ukrainians would achieve some sort of success in this area continues to diminish day by day as the Ukrainians take appalling casualties in these vast open fields as Russian attack helicopters and fixed-wing assets continue to pound Ukrainian forces along with Lancet drone systems and other domestic drone systems as well. Now, with these casualties that the Ukrainians are taking, this comes with a cost, not just in a human cost in terms of material and loss of manpower at the front line. It comes with a loss of morale as well. And we're starting to see signs that while in the early stages of the conflict, the Ukrainian armed forces were getting vast amounts of volunteers volunteering to fight for the Ukrainian military. Now, that has changed. We know now that tens of thousands of Ukrainian males have fled the country, quite possibly much, much higher than that. We know that tens of thousands of Ukrainian males are using the corrupt system in Ukraine in an attempt to buy their way out of conscription. We know recently the president of Ukraine has fired many of its recruiting leadership personnel. That is because of widespread corruption in terms of individuals having the ability to buy themselves out of this conflict. And again, I would say at this point, we've seen a lot more Ukrainians flee the country towards West, Switzerland, Germany, attempting to get into the United States, other Western European nations, including Romania, Poland, what have you. Again, there has been this great flight, and you have actually observed a reduction in the Ukrainian population. At the start of the war, it is believed that that the population of Ukraine was around 40 million. Currently, right now, there has been such a displacement that population, as it sits right now, is under 30 million. That means 10 million Ukrainians have fled the country. And again, we're starting to see an uptick in males, fighting age males, attempting to flee the country. Obviously, there are content providers on YouTube that are in that exact same situation where they have fled the Ukraine out of fear of being conscripted and sent to the front lines, which in fact it is happening. It is occurring. But again, right now we could be seeing a quickening of some of this flight, some of this attempt to purchase one's way out of conflict because of the massive amount of casualties that have occurred in the Ukrainian military with the onset of the June Ukrainian counteroffensive, which has thus far not been very successful. So we are going to continue watching what has occurred near the Kerch Strait Bridge, if in fact that was a successful strike, possibly was not a successful strike. We're going to continue to watch Russian operations within the vicinity of Kupiansk as the Russians continue offensive operations in this sector. And then we're also going to keep an eye, obviously, on the southern sector running from Zaporizhzhia east to Volhodar as the Ukrainians continue to waste assets and personnel against the Russian fortifications in the south, and obviously the Russian Air Force, which is continuing to expand and adopt new technologies which are being deployed in this conflict. Thanks for joining us today. As always, more to come very, very soon, and have a good day.